Hi everyone, welcome back to another Culture Northumberland podcast with me, Claire Venus. I am with Andrea Perrott today, and I'm so excited to speak to Andrea. We've just seen each other a little way before Christmas in December. We're recording in January, and we're just going to have a catch-up chat about where November Club are, where they're headed, how we've worked together in the past, the things that we've tried, and the things that we would like to try this year, or that we're questioning whether we try or not. So, welcome, Andrea. It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too, Claire.
Would you start by just telling us a little bit about who you are and your role at November Club?
Yeah. So my role is Business and Operations Director, and I think today might be my 5th year anniversary of working for November Club.
Oh, today. Oh, that's so nice. Oh, that is so, oh, congratulations. LinkedIn might tell you if you put it on LinkedIn, they normally do that, don't they? Do you a little cheer or something. That's amazing. Wow. So 5 years. Wow. So is it quite a different company to when you started 5 years ago?
Yeah, it is a very different company because, of course, we've changed artistic directors in the time that
Yes.
I've been
Yeah.
working there.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cinzia Hardy recruited me. I worked with her for about 2 years, and then Joe's taken over for the last 3.
Yeah, so Joe is your artistic director now.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
Chinzi was artistic director there for a long time, wasn't she?
She was the founder director of
Founder director, yeah,
November
whole
Club. Yeah,
organization. Yeah. And so as a company, you guys are in Morpeth. You have a headquarters
yeah,
there still, yeah?
yeah. We do. We operate from a very small office, a very small, very cold office in Morpeth, just above what used to be Chintzy. Sorry, Hardy's Flowers. I always get that confused.
Right, okay.
And if anybody wants to pop in and say hello, they're more than welcome to. And I know in previous times we've participated in the shared office space. People can come and work from our
Mm.
office if they want to.
Yeah, that's really nice. And we have put that message out a few times,
Yeah,
but even over Christmas, I had two inquiries about shared office space and one about studio space. So the shift that we've seen in the Northumberland cultural ecology and the people that are moving into the area is that they want community and connection, and they're asking about these things that you would find quite easily in the city, and we're still trying to kind of set up those infrastructures. So you guys have been really generous, and you've had people come and hot desk, and you've shared space in that way in the last little while, haven't you?
we have, and it's a lovely benefit for us because we're only a small team. There's only 4 of us in the whole company on a permanent basis, I should say.
Yes.
And we're not always in the office. So sometimes we're in the office on our own. So it's really lovely to have somebody else just for company, even if you don't want to chat, just being in the office with somebody's lovely.
Mm, that connection. And we found that with co-working as well, the co-working projects that we set up in Alnwick, in Berwick, and in Hexham, which were manned by, well, myself in Alnwick, and then Yvette Jar over in Hexham and Chloe Smith up in Berwick, that it was just really nice to have that connection with somebody new. And a lot of the time in Alnwick, I'd never ever come across their name before, never mind met them. So that's been beautiful. And also to kind of go, okay, like, take the temperature of where this person is and tell them all the things that I know, and then vice versa, that lovely exchange, because we do get quite kind of head down, we're quite isolated, aren't we, in the way that we
Yeah.
work, either in a small company or as a freelancer. Brilliant. So is that formalized in any way? Could we find that on your website, or is it just a case of emailing in?
It just email in at
Yeah.
info at I can't we did have something on our website, and I think probably what's on there is if you're interested, we're happy to,
Email in.
if you're interested, email in.
Yeah.
Over last summer we did specific dates, but we just thought, well, we'll let, and we might do that over this summer, but in the
Mm,
meantime just
yeah.
email.
Yeah, that's good. Great. And so primarily, you guys have a focus of being a theatre company, a site specific, like lots of different ways of engaging audiences in pockets of space and towns in Northumberland. Is that
Yes.
I've got that right?
Yeah,
Yeah, still
yeah,
got that
that's
focus.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joe has a lot of experience in immersive work, so he has a particular interest in that. Um, but I would say that we're particularly moving our focus into the places that we work from.
Okay, nice. Interesting. And you have a project at the moment. I've seen lots about it on social media called Josie. So that
Yeah.
one is touring this year.
It probably will tour in the financial year 25-26.
Okay, so
This,
like April 25 to 26. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I guess it's going to be more towards the end of like autumn 25, really.
Mm.
Anyway,
Forward
but
planning. I love this.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
well, yeah, well, I think that's one of the good things about being a national portfolio organisation is it encourages you to do ongoing 3-year plans. So kind
Mm,
of we have to. But there will be work coming out of Josie this year that we will be showing to the public.
okay.
Um, in November, we did an event at Alnwick Playhouse and some community events around where we played some of the music, and at the Alnwick Playhouse event we had some speakers come and talk about the issues related to the topic, and we're planning to do a bigger event in Newcastle in March and
Okay.
some more smaller community events around Northumberland then as well.
Mm.
And then we're going to produce a digital video of the music, and then we're going to use that to try and promote out to venues to get some interest in venues for holding the tour.
Okay, great. Okay, so it gives us a slight idea into the timeline. I guess the seed of the idea is probably a few years old. And then now what we're finding is there's been some research and development happen. There's been some spaces that have been open to have conversation. The creative team have been brought together. And then
Yeah.
that timeline is continuing on through this year. And then you're looking at a kind of full scale tour autumn next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've been working with Katie Doherty. She's been writing the musical for us. And it's the first time we as an organisation have written a musical from the music rather than having a script and fitting the music into the.
Wow. Okay.
And it's the first time that Katie has ever produced a musical like that as well, because she's only ever been given scripts and had to write the music. So it is a bigger role for Katie,
Mm.
and it's a task that takes time. So we
Yeah.
want to get it right rather than get it out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that creative process would be really, really interesting to not just the cultural sector, but also your audiences as well. So you're building up that audience connection and
Exactly.
support over quite a long time period. And hopefully that then feeds, they tell each other, tell friends, tell family, and then you end up with an audience for the tour.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I like that plan. That's good. And so I guess if we will rewind, because I've had Joe on the podcast before, actually, I think when he was first in post, I'm going back
Yes.
a little while, and I was either pregnant, which will be over 3 years ago, or maybe I'd just had my baby, but she was a pandemic baby. So I know it was around then sometime. And we were talking about, is it called Walk in Your Shoes? Was that the name of the
Yes.
project? So that's that your pandemic project. And there
Yeah.
was this beautiful invitation for people to just come and walk
Yeah.
with you over the causeway of Holy Island. And we all watched how that unfolded. And there was kind of volunteer stories came out. And it was a lovely space holding project, but a very alternative way to see theatre, you know? And I'm using the bunny ears for anyone listening on podcast. And so that was really interesting to me to speak to Joe about and say, okay, is this bespoke to the way that you see Northumberland, having moved up from the south? Do you feel like this is what we need, you know, as a location? Is this the invite that people need? And he was really interesting to speak to about that, you know, that doorstep theatre, that kind of bringing theatre to place. And it sounds like that direction's been carrying on.
Yes, yeah, and that's why we've been taking some of the Josie events to fairly small communities. So we went to Spittal, and
I love Spittle. I love
yeah,
it.
and we went to Great Whittington. Great
Okay,
Whittington was
never
one of the
been.
village. No, oh, it's the most beautiful village, and they
Is
are the
it?
most welcoming people.
Nice. Okay.
It's one of the places that we did the doorstep theatre,
Okay.
and we actually produced the doorstep theatre in the community hall's garden, and they said to us, if you have anything else, come back. So we thought,
Nice.
okay, we're going to take you up on that. So
Yeah, that's nice. And I think as well, I don't know, you know, we were speaking about this when we spoke, Joe and I, but we were speaking about whether any of those hyperlocal communities might travel, or even if they were just on your mailing list and they shared it on their social media, how that could potentially grow in Northumberland, but also raise an awareness globally of the type of work that you're doing and the
yeah,
process that you guys have, because it's a super interesting process.
yeah. And certainly and funnily enough, I'm just producing our equalities report at the moment, and the data coming from the communities event is that people were coming from very, very local
Mm.
positions and really valued it being in local areas. And the digital piece that we produced back in March last year, that did have some international audiences. And we maximised the use of the Impact and Insight survey that Arts Council encourages to use, and it's got a peer review facility.
Right.
And because it was a digital piece, basically we sent it out to everybody on Impact and Insight who was a peer that was interested in music and theatre. So we've got people from around the country hearing the digital piece, some of whom have said, come back to us when you've got the live show.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's an interesting tool.
It's really interesting how that kind of develops and ripples and grows, isn't it? And especially since the pandemic, and I always kind of hold that as a shift for all of us with culture in Northumberland, because for the first time we were all able to be together in a room. I mean, Zoom existed before the pandemic, but none of us used it. So it was this huge permission slip to go, oh yeah, great, okay, this actually works really well for us. And so we did understand much more nuance about the communities, the audiences, the people that were working in the cultural sector in Northumberland. And I think that's continued, hasn't it? And then we're kind of, yeah, we're rolling that out and better understanding who else is interested. I know when I started the Culture Northumberland Substack, so I moved our mailing list from MailChimp purely for a financial reason to start with, because we were just about to hit 400 subscribers, and then there was going to be a cost, and I try and keep all of the costs low for Culture Northumberland so that it's sustainable. And when I first moved the newsletter, it shows you the map of the world, and so we were getting subscriber interest from all over the world, and I was like, this is great. You know, where you've been on social media really kind of tightly kind of packed into this bubble of, oh, well, that's a Northeast thing, or that's a Northumberland thing. It was all of a sudden putting us on this global stage, and then we can adjust the content, and we can adjust what's interesting and what we can profile to suit that audience. So it's a really exciting time for us to have made that shift and made that move for the newsletter. And I think that there are still these opportunities, aren't there, with digital content, like you say. You never quite know, and it's good to take stock and see, you know, if you can reflect on that, if there are those statistical reports like there are on Substack, or like there have been through your impact report. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's nice to share that as well, if we can share that with the sector and encourage people in that. Yeah. I wanted to ask Andrea about your Grow development program. So I was part of the consultation team that met at Alnwick Playhouse, and I was trying to remember the timeline for that. I feel like it was maybe early last year-ish. We met and
probably was.
Yeah. And it was a brilliant project, even if it was just that, you know, just that meeting, just that space to have our voice heard, to meet other people with different experiences. And then I've kept a close eye on how it's all developed. And it's been a really interesting project to just feel that it's almost like you guys just took the temperature of the sector and then made a project happen, you know, and quite quickly. That's how it felt from the outside looking in.
Oh, good. That's really lovely feedback. And
yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Well, you can use that. And so with that now, what's happening with that project? Obviously, the research informed a lot of your practice and a lot of the plans going forward. But what's happening with the project? Can people apply to kind of better understand it, be part of a future consultation meeting? What's next?
I don't think we've got any kind of future consultation. What we're doing at the moment is implementing some of the things that came out of those discussions.
Yeah.
So we've implemented a program that's got 3 parts to it. And I'm going to forget the 3 taglines, but the first element is around making sure school children know that the arts sector is a career. And we're seeing a lot in the arts reporting that children just aren't getting involved enough in theatre when they're at school. So we're going in and we're doing a mixture of school assemblies and workshops with children about what can you do in the theatre. And we've seen about just under 800 children in the last year that we've done that with. Yeah. Then we've got a programme for freelancers where we work with people that are relatively new to the cultural sector as a freelancer and people that are experienced. And the new people we link into a mentor from somewhere else in the country, region, which whoever suits them really. So they get some support to develop their skills. And we also provide a personal development budget that they can spend on something that they think is useful for them. And how we link that is that what we do is we link those packages to a role in one of our productions, so that people are getting some actual paid work. We pay. We're an ITC ethical employer, so we pay ethical rates and pensions and holiday pay for performers and stage managers and things like that. So the project that we've got people involved on the Grow programme at the moment are that we've recruited an experienced producer, Fran Arnold, who is working with Joe to identify what we could be doing on new and upcoming projects. And we have an assistant producer working on Josie with our experienced producer, and she's being mentored by a third producer that has absolutely nothing to do with the production. And we had hoped to be delivering more productions this year, and we weren't able to. So we had an exchange with Papa Tango, who put on the Watchtower in Whitley Bay over the Christmas period. And they said we would really benefit from some help in stage management. So we helped them in terms of recruiting a stage manager, providing mentoring to the stage manager as well. So that's the kind of thing we've done this year.
There's a lot of deep exchanges and offers of support and kind of meeting people where they're at and making sure that it can feel robust to have this career in the arts, which I think we have, to be really honest, we've all been very wobbly about, haven't we, in the last little while. So yeah, there's a robustness there of holding somebody in that and saying, this is how we're doing it anyway. This is how I mean, it's all made up, isn't it? We all make it up, but this is how we're doing it. Feels very secure and a beautiful invitation to those younger people.
Yeah, I think the area that we feel we need to do more work on is whether we can collaborate with more local theatre companies, so that if you get a role with us, you then have got the experience to go on to a job with another theatre company. That is really difficult to manage, because that would mean us kind of negotiating around when we put productions on, for example. So I don't know if we'll get there, but wouldn't it be great if we could have
it's
a kind
really
of
interesting. I think one of the things that came out of my conversation with Luke was this idea of a clash diary. So
yeah.
It's something that's been talked about a lot of times, and we did have somebody right at the beginning of Culture Northumberland who'd sort of put some bones on that of like, these are the events. But I think it's more than just events, because there's so much participatory stuff and research and development stuff that's part of everything that builds towards the event. It's almost like a diary that kind of builds in that kind of production time, that research and development time, and it overlays so people can kind of see and jump around if they wanted to. I mean, obviously the boundary of Northumberland is the space that I'm working in with the Culture Northumberland focus, and it can spill over that. But I think for the purposes of the clash diary and all of the similarities that people face working rurally, it would be a really interesting project to try and fathom out. I've given it to Beth. I've said, Beth, this is the idea. What thoughts have you got? I've got some, but yeah, I feel like it needs a bit of space to be workable and usable and up to date and all that sort of thing. So yeah, super interesting. So the research from that project, is that publicly available? Can people read the Grow report from your website?
Yeah, it is. It's on the website under the Grow banner, and that should be fairly obvious when you go on the website.
Great, yeah, I can share all of those links. That's really good. And then there's something else that you've been heading up for a little while, which is called Culture Connects, I think, which was originally a get together for some of the organisations, both larger and smaller, within Northumberland, to connect on certain topics that came out of a big piece of audience research that was done around the pandemic. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. It was actually done in preparation for the rebidding of the MPO process, actually, because we knew that we would benefit from having some audience research to produce our plans for that. So yeah, originally the group started up with the intention of trying to implement some of the recommendations from the audience research, but we've also got a couple of other networks operating in Northumberland. One is the Northumberland Strategic Culture Network, which only certain cultural organisations attend. and another is the Thriving Communities Thriving Together Northumberland, which is a network for all community organisations, not just cultural organisations. And it's a way of trying to connect those two networks with the smaller, particularly the smaller cultural networks, but not just the smaller cultural networks. We've been running that probably for about 3 years. And one of the things that came out the last year is organisations either don't have the capacity to do the group work that is necessary to implement some of the recommendations from the audience research, so much will to do it, but just no capacity to do it. But also some of the things that came out of the audience research, we don't have the influence, we don't have the I suppose that's mainly it, isn't it? The strategic linking in to be able to implement. So we've decided to experiment this year with making it just a chance to connect in to other cultural organisations in the county. And we've got our first meeting coming up at the beginning of February. And I'm hoping that that will still provide some value to the people that are involved, because both Catherine Rowe and I, Catherine's our marketing and audience development manager, have found it invaluable to connect with these organisations over the last 2 years. And we don't want to lose that connection. And I should say, if any other cultural organisations want to join, you can. And we're holding the next meeting on Zoom, so we don't even have to meet.
Quite easy to connect in. And so will there be a focus for this next one, or is it a chance to regroup and just try and herd the cats? See what happens and connect in? Yeah.
I've said that I'm not going to set an agenda. We're going to come. If people have got things they want to talk about, we'll talk about them. If it lasts 10 minutes and we say there's nothing more to say, that's fine. And I don't anticipate it'll go on for more than an hour. And I participate in a network with some of the other people who do a similar job to me in Newcastle. And we have found it invaluable just to have somebody that we can say things like, do you have a policy on X? Can you share what you've got? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing's really, really good. And also, I think there is capacity to share audiences. So that I've done some consultation over the years for Alnwick Playhouse, specifically around families, children, young people and schools. And all the barriers that the schools have got around accessing culture in Northumberland are pretty much the same, unless they're in walking distance of either Berwick Maltings, Queen's Hall, Hexham, Alnwick Playhouse. And I'm probably missing lots of other amazing theatre experiences that people can walk to in other pockets. But it is that it's like if they've got to pay for a bus, it's £500 no matter how far it's traveling. And so that is also then the first barrier. And then the second barrier is obviously ticket costs, which we've tried to manage over the years. But we've been in this space of kind of trying to balance, okay, how much programming is the right amount of programming? Of course, you want to be inspirational and exciting, and you want to bring companies in and have a real kind of jewel in the crown in a town. But then if the children can't afford to come, we end up with a lot of empty seats. So that's the issue that we've been facing post-pandemic with Alnwick Playhouse. And I know the other venues have got their own struggles. And that came out in the audience development report around how on earth do we get children to access culture, and how do we keep influencing teachers and the will of teachers to bring them to different things and have them experience different things. And I know the work that I've done, it's been a subtle influence that has then come out in terms of they say, okay, Claire, this time I will, or if there's free tickets or if there's discounted tickets. But it's that personal relationship, and I just kind of fly in and out, and it's like, okay, that's wrapped up for now. But we don't have those roles anymore within education, within venues, within education across the county. As Wendy Scott, who I work with at the local authority, used to have a team of 8 or 9, people that were on the ground, going out, visiting projects, supporting, joining people up. So we have to find a way to join up ourselves, share practice, help each other out, support each other to keep ourselves afloat, but also to keep children, young people and audiences accessing culture. Otherwise we don't have an audience and we don't have a reason for being, do we?
No, we don't. And certainly one of the things that we have been able to do a bit more out of connecting culture is share each other's social media posts.
Good,
So,
yeah.
so that we're sharing with our audiences what other organisations are doing. Some organisations do it better than others. Some organisations don't have specific marketing people. So
Some
it is
NPOs don't have that.
no,
Yeah.
exactly. No. So I'm kind of hoping it's a bit better than it was, but we can't prove that. And it is dependent on what's going on in that organization at the moment. If you've got a production of your own on, you don't have time to
Yes, yeah, it's so
other
dependent on
people's.
capacity. I
Yeah,
think there's a cultural shift around how people have consumed culture as well. So one of the things that I have really flagged with Anik Playhouse is we need video previews, even if it's just iPhone stuff, we need photography, we need behind the scenes, because the way, especially parents can consume culture on social media, they want an in before they decide. So this has been really interesting because in the cultural sector for my whole career, it was like, there's the logo, there's the piece of print. Now you digitize the print, that's it. And it's just not enough anymore. So bringing to life whatever we've got through video and through conversations like this, and also through what is it that the audiences want to know, what's going to kind of tip them over into coming to support or coming to share or coming to see, whatever it is. And I do think that social media, and I've spoken to Catherine about this at
yeah,
length, works against us now, whereas it did work for us. So there was never an algorithm the way there is now on social media. What we put out was seen by our audience. Now there's an algorithm. So we're all trying to adjust and find new ways. And we've got a group here and a page there and whatever else. But even with it being someone's full-time or part-time job, you're still only reaching a percentage of your audience through social
yeah,
media. So my big shift is to newsletter, to mailing list, because it goes directly into the email inbox. You can see the percentage open rate, you know who's read it. You've got a bit more control over it that way. But it's also this really kind of visceral, bringing to life, what is it? You know, we're so bad in the arts of being like, this is it, whimsical, little bit of copy, tiny bit of image. It's like, nobody knows what it is. You know, we've got to get better at explaining it. And I think from what I see with November Club, Catherine is brilliant at this. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you guys on the podcast and have this conversation around what you do and what you do really, really well and the energy that you put into it, because it feels like I've got to know what your project is before I've even seen it. You know, I already have like an essence of understanding of what the project is, and that's good marketing and good
yeah.
engagement, you know?
Well, and I know when I was growing up, I've always been interested in the theatre, but interestingly, it was always the back office stuff or the backroom stuff. How do you actually make something? I really wanted to know that. So it's lovely that we can give that opportunity to some people out there that might be
Yeah.
interested in it. Yeah.
And I
And
think I've
Joe loves
seen
doing it as well. So that helps. You
Yes.
know, you've got
Yeah,
the
I was going to say, I've seen, you know, a marked difference in Joe just turning up. You know, he's just there. He's there on the Facebook feed. There's a little video of him. He's just sharing exactly what's going on. He's ready for it. Um, it's like we've opened the door. I feel like you guys have a very, like, this is what we're doing. It's very transparent. Come on in. You know, anyone can kind of experience it and we'll put it out there. And it seems to be working well. You know, from the outside looking in, it feels positive, it feels inclusive, it feels like you're listening, it feels like you're asking. So those things feel really positive. And that's, you know, I want people to look at your organization and have a look what the opportunities are for them to connect in, either as a freelancer, another organization, an audience member, whoever's kind of listening to this. There are some great opportunities there. Um, in terms of, you said you were quite a small team. Do you feel like, are you 2, 3 years into MPO now? Will you have to apply again
we're
next year?
we're in the we're still in the first year of the MPO,
Oh,
of this
fine,
current
okay.
MPO, obviously. So the second one starts in April, and we're
Mhm.
anticipating we will have to reapply at the end of this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, that's you know, after 2 years of it, you're reapplying. But
Yeah.
we've been MPO since is it 2012, I think. So
I
it's
think so,
been,
quite a while.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
before my time.
Yes,
I would
yeah,
say.
yeah. But that is. you know, you're in service to the Arts Council, and we're
Yeah,
looking at that model, you know, we're looking in and going, this is a model that is working, that is delivering on the Arts Council's 10-year strategy, that is really robustly thinking about the aims and objectives that Arts Council have set out. And it's not easy to do that as an individual. So with my freelance hat on, it's great that you guys are here in Northumberland and there are other MPOs to look to kind of look at best practice and to understand what you've learned over that MPO period and what you can share with us as well. One of the things that's been difficult over the last little while is that a lot of the project grants that have gone in, including 2 of ours, have been turned down. And so ordinarily freelancers would club together, you know, somebody would write the Arts Council bid, you would have 9 months or a year or so of delivery of Arts Council funded projects.
yeah,
And a lot of them are being turned down second and third times. And I'm meeting with the Arts Council next week to say, look,
good.
this is what, you know, this is what we've come up with. This is what we've been doing over 3 years. We're now at this point, we're talking to people, we're listening, we're really trying to understand what's possible and what people need. But we're stuck, you know, we're stuck because to be sustainable, how do we earn income if we
Yeah,
if we can't get a project grant? It'll just crumble. So one of the things I'm really interested in from a November Club point of view, and I know Catherine will know some of this as well, is what you think not Culture Northumberland has been able to do. Like, how has it been able to plug in and support or amplify what you're already doing? And you know, are you aware of any impact of that, or do you think it's a good thing that Culture Northumberland's been doing what it's been doing for 3 years?
yeah, I do. Obviously, I think it's a good thing. Well, obviously, things like this have promoted November Club in a way that we haven't promoted before, and working with you has encouraged us to think about how we can promote what we do. We also do tag you in on most of the stuff.
Social media, yeah,
We
you are good at
sometimes,
that,
we
yeah.
sometimes forget, but the most of the stuff that we produce, and we know that we get access to your audience as a result of that. You're talking to somebody who does a lot of monitoring and evaluating as part of their job. I don't know if I could prove that,
The
but
impact.
yeah, and that's that is one of the problems with social media. How do you prove that? But certainly we get a sense that working with Culture Northumberland has enabled our work to reach a wider audience. Things like the freelancer meetings that you were talking about, that we had the discussion about Grow. Your Culture Northumberland enabled us to meet people that we wouldn't have met through our own networks, definitely.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to have the identity of Culture Northumberland for the last few years, because
Yeah,
more and more people find it. So more and more people will just send me, you know, just a kind of sussing out email, like, this is what I'm looking for. So someone just started at a new cultural venue and emailed in to say, this is what I'm interested in. Do you have a network? Somebody else was asking about studio space. Somebody else was asking about office space, all in the space of just this little Christmas period that we've just been in. And it's been really interesting to me to think about that, because we've got our website that obviously we can put opportunities on, and we can do pieces of research work like we did with the studios research piece to try and kind of open that up. And the idea there is that it, you know, it can link people up and it can save them time, and they can kind of see how culture in Northumberland fits together. And then on our Facebook group, you know, I expected it to be artists and creatives of Northumberland, people who wanted to work in Northumberland. And we're now at nearly 600 members. And it's more those people who are fascinated with what's going on as well. So I think there's a bit of that. There's a bit of, I don't want to miss anything. I want to be part of this group and have some discussions here. And there's some creative businesses on there. So it's been really interesting to just have the facade, like the shop front up, and then have the doors open, you know, to an email address to say, yes, we're here, we can help you, we can match you up. And then the bits of funding that we've been able to free up for specific bits of work, some of which was through Creative UK's Challenge Fund twice over, have been really useful. So the second time was more a steer from me. So I acted as a mentor for a couple of artists who needed specific things within the county. And the first time round were kind of specific pieces of work that if I had time, I maybe would have done myself, but it was brilliant for them to do it from their position rather than it always being me. And that was something that was really highlighted, that everybody on an individual level has a completely different set of experiences of what culture has been able to be for them in their career.
Yeah.
So some people have got a commercial arm to what they're doing, and they've had to implement that in because of the pandemic. And then they're still really interested in the things we've talked about, the connection and the co-working and the co-fundraising and the working together as well. So there's kind of those people. And then there's people who are just completely confused about how the sector works and how funding works and how they can maybe free up opportunities for themselves, and should they be doing that, and do they have permission to do that? So there's been this real shift of a permission slip to say, yes, you can apply for
Okay.
council funding. Yes, you
Yeah.
can apply for this specific fund. And so part of my job has been to highlight what's out there in terms of funding for artists, freelancers and small organisations. I feel like the bigger organisations are fine, so I've not focused so much on that, but I have mentioned bits and bobs of it. And then people have gone off and kind of got bits of funding and stuff. And again, it's really hard to quantify that. I know about it, but this is the point where I need to write it all down and have it in
Yeah.
this report with these podcasts to say, these are the sorts of things that have been happening. These are the sort of connections that we've made. These are the pots of funding that have come in, and this is what's happened off the back of that. So some of that stuff takes a long time, is what I've realized. I think, at first we just wanted people to be better connected, and we've definitely done that, and the pandemic enabled that. And now we're realizing that some of the shifts just are cultural shifts, and they take some time. And then we've got the changing landscape of the cultural sector and the opportunities that are being presented as well, like the Create Berwick, in terms of that kind of
Yeah.
specific focus up there, and what's been possible by having a project manager to work with and kind of plug into and kind of influence some of the ideas and program up there that I've had and other specific freelancers have had. So hopefully we can bring more of that through. I think that what I felt massively is this frustration with social media, in that you want to get a message out and you have to do the social medias, all of them, and then the newsletter, and then probably the reminder as well, if we're honest.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a lot, it's a lot of content, it's a lot of strategic thinking, but I don't think we're getting away from that. I think we all are, there's always those conversations about, should I have a TikTok as well? There's always these questions, and we need to learn from each other in that, and we need to share each other's work, because
Yeah.
otherwise people don't see it.
Yeah. And picking up there, one of the things that Culture Northumberland is starting to do for us, and more of this would be really good, is that we can't deliver any of our work without employing freelancers. The four people that work for us, apart from Joe, obviously, and to a lesser extent Louise, do more backroom stuff. And we really want to employ Northumberland freelancers.
Freelancers,
But
yeah.
we don't necessarily know who's out there and what they can do. And that's one of the things that Culture Northumberland has given us access to, is seeing the different types of skills that are out there, because those people aren't necessarily aware of us. Still a lot of people in Northumberland don't know about November Club.
Oh, yeah.
And so Culture Northumberland is a way to find out who's in the freelance field in Northumberland, so that we can make the most of them.
That's a really good point, and I know I'm going to speak to Layla next week. So Layla at North East Cultural Freelancers, because since that organisation was set up and they're a CIC, we've worked together numerous times, and we're working together again, because there is a sense of us both holding the freelancers of the North East. Obviously my focus is in Northumberland, but with a larger kind of view on the wider North East and national, and now international as well because of Substack. But holding those freelancers and understanding what they need, and understanding where things are working well and where things are working less well. So Layla does all of that work all of the time. And so my focus in talking to her is to really understand, is there anywhere where we can streamline that work for organisations like November Club? Like, is there anything that we're missing and that would be just much easier to kind of hold as a kind of partnership in some way? So we'll talk about that next week, I think. I mean, obviously at the moment, it's who I know, who Layla knows, and then the 2 Facebook groups, that's it, and anybody that emails, and then anyone that you end up meeting in person. But there's so many beautifully creative people and beautifully skilled people, and then this kind of sense of people leaving the region to go and work in London, or to go and work in cities or whatever else, and then yeah, I think just understanding more who is here, right here and now when you need somebody, it's a good thing,
Yeah,
isn't it? We can
yeah.
understand that.
And I remember going to the Northumberland Strategic Culture Network event that was held at Seton Delaval Hall,
Yes.
and you showed that video of some of the freelancers that were up. That was a fantastic film for. It's kind of like, gosh, we've got people in the county that can do all those things that you can really
Mm.
think about.
Yeah, and quite often they're just kind of head down, making it work for themselves.
Yeah,
'Cause they're really
yeah,
open to partnership work, and it's just they've just got to make it work. So they're doing
yeah.
that. Yeah, there are those sorts of resources, and actually we could probably shout about them some more. There's a resource called the Creative Book, which was set up by two freelancers, Beth, who works with me, Beth Wardle, and Jess Thomas Harrison, as part of some funding from Creative UK a couple of years ago. And the idea is that it's an online directory, and I don't actually know how it's gone for them. So I was around for the launch of it and filled my details in, and then I haven't really seen much more about it. But
Mm,
I think they were just about to start a Substack with it. So I'll check in with Beth, because the idea behind it was that it was an online directory of Northumberland creative people across any medium, so that employers could search it. And this came from Jess and Beth's idea of that they're always being emailed and asked, do you know somebody who could? So whether it was photography or social media or a creative producer, they felt like they always fielded a lot of emails because of their position. So this website was the idea to kind of go, okay, like here it all is, just go search it. It was all categorized, beautifully designed by Daniel Weatheritt, and who I know you know, Morpeth-based illustrator. So I'll catch up with them and see, because it could be that they just maybe need more support to get that message out
mm,
and get more. It's free to fill it in. So they maybe just need more support to do that. And again, it's like the knowledge is just sitting with me. I know it's there, but I haven't had a chance to kind of catch up with them. So I'll have a look at that. It's a really useful prompt for me actually to see, and a great idea.
mm. The other thing that came out of the audience research that I haven't managed to, I've done some work around and just think I have no idea how we resolve this, is that a lot of people who responded to the research said, we don't actually know what's on in Northumberland. And interestingly, I did speak to Damien about this at Alnwick Playhouse, and he said, I think if people want to see something at Alnwick Playhouse, they know where the Alnwick Playhouse website is and can see what we've got on. And I think that's true of venues, but there are lots of individual freelancers and smaller theatre companies doing things that don't have a website that people know exists. And so as a person who lives in Northumberland, it's very difficult for me to go, okay, I fancy going and seeing something this month. What's on?
Mhm, mhm. So
I've
we've
no
got this,
idea how
yeah,
that's
I
resolved.
think, well, we've had this conversation a couple of times, and I think it
Mm,
has been resolved to a point. So Northumberland could definitely be better at holding the tourists. We've got such a brilliant influx of tourists multiple times a year in various pockets of Northumberland that is only increasing. And we could be better at holding them and sharing the cultural gems. We definitely could. But there are two resources. There's Cultured Northeast, which obviously it's Sam Onefor and Dave Whetstone, who used to head up the journal Culture
yeah.
Mag. It's a brilliant resource. They got a big chunk of money from Creative UK. They're doing brilliant things. They've got a newsletter, they've got a website. There is a What's On button, but it's the whole of the Northeast. And then there's another publication that Claire from Narc magazine heads up, that is more aimed at tourists, that is a magazine. So it's a glossy magazine that you buy. I forget the name of it, but I'll put the link in. And tourists can buy it from kind of petrol stations and different places when they arrive in Northumberland. And it's a directory. And so it's a big piece of work. And I think it covers quite a long time. It might cover about 9 months or something like that. But it exists. The website needs some thinking about and some work, but this publication will be in a lot of tourist hands when they come. In terms of locals, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like you, I feel like, well, blink and you miss it. And I don't know whether some of that's because I'm so plugged in, it's almost too much. And it's that thing of going, well, what is it that I want? Like, is it something family friendly? Like, how do I find that? Like, is it something
Mm,
that suits both the ages of my children? Do I want a night out with my husband? Do I want to go meet some colleagues? Like, how do I search on those things, and how do
yes,
I make that work?
yeah.
And we've had this conversation quite a few times in terms of how isolating it feels to drive the country roads at night. I don't know whether you have this same feeling, but Penny at the Old School Gallery in Almouth does these beautiful launch evenings. And I've been to one, but only one, because it's always like, oh, I've got to go, it's only
Yeah.
10-15 minutes drive, but it's not a very nice drive. It's not well lit, it just feels a bit of a big thing. Whereas in the city, it's all well lit, the lights are on, you can flip between, go for dinner, go and see something.
Yeah.
So it's just a different, I feel it's more of a daytime culture, sometimes, especially in the darker months.
Mm.
But yes, again, with joining up organisations to share each other's work and that place of Culture Northumberland, and do we have a responsibility there? Do we have a responsibility to curate as much as we possibly can every month for the newsletter? Maybe we do, maybe we do. I'm still open to kind of questioning that.
Well, I think that is interesting. I don't know if you do. That isn't what I'm particularly suggesting here, and I really don't know the answer to this question. Unfortunately, Claire, I wish I could solve it just like that. But anything that you do relies on all of us telling you what's on, and that sounds like a massive task as well, doesn't it?
Mhm. So the way it's worked previously is that I've tried to balance it where it's something from an NPO, something that feels accessible, something that's a bit quirky, something that's in a non-specific location, something from an individual. And I've tried to cover a lot of art forms and just kind of highlight. And I have gone out and done the research, and then I've asked Beth if she's got anything else to add. And I've posted it on the Facebook group and said, I'm about to send a newsletter. Does anybody want anything highlighted? So there's a curatorial job there, but it's not too arduous. Like it's fine. I think if I was receiving reams and reams of emails and
Yeah,
having to curate from that would be harder. But I think because people are so busy, they're
yeah.
just doing what they do, and then I'm just extracting what I need for the balance within the newsletter. One of the things that we've tried, and we're just in this pilot phase, is that we've tried a paid subscription for the Culture Northumberland newsletter just for artists. So it launched just before Christmas, £35 for the year, where an artist gets an advert, like a full scale advert. They can talk about anything they want within that advert, as many photos as they want, video, podcast, anything they want, and then multiple social media shares and a newsletter mention. So that's guaranteed for the £35. And one of the reasons that we kept it at that low rate was we were questioning where it might sit with somebody who was emerging to someone who was
Yeah,
experienced, because we knew the experienced people would think that was great value and go
yeah.
for it if they got organised enough to buy it. But the inexperienced ones and the ones that are just emerging, it was like, oh, I don't know, it feels a lot or whatever. So we're just fathoming that out, and it's been really interesting to see who's taken that up. So we've got 7 artists, and I'll probably do another push quite soon. And we were questioning if there was something similar for organisations, what would they want and how much could they afford? What would they be wanting to guarantee in terms of numbers? So newsletter numbers. So in terms of us, increasing our subscriptions and growing that presence across the world, what's the expectation there? Is there even a question around, can we import or ask permission to import multiple mailing lists to the Culture Northumberland mailing list, so that everybody knows once a year it gets updated with everybody who's said that they're interested in culture from anybody, any organisation, and it's one
Okay.
huge list. It's totally possible to do it practically. Ethically, obviously, there's a GDPR thing that you've
Yeah,
got to kind of come across, but it's whether people would value that, okay, this is going to be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of emails in one place that then says, okay, this is it. November Club have got Josie, here it is. Here's a big old piece on it, and it goes to everybody's email inboxes that's ever been interested in any culture anywhere, because we got that mailing list.
yeah. Well, that would be amazing, wouldn't
Wouldn't
it?
it be amazing? I know.
Yeah, it would. But even promoting Culture Northumberland to the wider Northumberland residents. And again, I know that you just don't have the funding to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you could build Culture Northumberland's own mailing list organically, that would help.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but again, that's going to require some marketing, which you don't have the budget to do.
It's really interesting to me because Luke said to me, I would be really interested in buying that advertising package if I knew that you had buyers of art on your list. And I
Yeah.
think you've got more people like me and him. You know, it's like
Yes.
we're
Yeah.
working in culture, we're interested in culture, we get
Yeah.
that newsletter. So I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a really, really interesting question. And I think it's one that we could spend more time in because I am a profile of person that would buy art, but I'm not a Northumberland tourist who would spend, hundreds, maybe even
No.
£1,000 on a piece of art, but they do exist. They do come and they do buy the art. I know about
Yeah.
that. So it's really interesting in terms of if they would be interested in receiving some mailing lists from us, some newsletters from us, and what that would be, what that content would be, because at the moment I'm amplifying everything that everyone's doing for the people who live, work, and want to work in Northumberland, but I'm not thinking about the people who commercially want to buy in and support.
No.
Maybe that's a missed opportunity. Maybe it's too confusing to do the two through the same newsletter. I don't know. It's super interesting though.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because I think we do have two distinct audiences in Northumberland. I mean, for us, it's really lovely to have people, tourists, come to our show, but our priority is the people who live in Northumberland, really.
Mm,
But I can understand how some of the artists, as you say there, want people from outside the county. It's
yeah.
yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, we are getting revisiting tourists now. So we know that, we've seen that, we've felt that, the artists know about it. So there's been this really interesting increase in revisiting tourists every single year since the pandemic. And again, that's super interesting. They would want the what's on. They don't care whether something's Alnwick, Hexham, Morpeth, a tiny little village. They're just on holiday. They just want to go
Yeah.
to something. So
Yeah.
they're interested in that. And then also there's that kind of commercial arm as well, and that commercial element that they want as some sort of souvenir to take away. So I'm tentatively doing some research. So when the sycamore gap tree was felled, we did a post on Culture
Oh, yeah.
Northumberland that was specifically about where people could find more information and kind of follow the story of what was going to happen next. So we put that information out, and I invited anybody that had craft pieces or artistic
Oh, yeah.
pieces to just comment below, just so there was a place to kind of hold that. And that got quite a lot of attention. We had thousands of views on that post, and people are still trickling in bits and bobs as they're kind of deciding to make something in memorial of that space. And I do think that is a really interesting model to keep an eye on. Like, will I do another post this year? Probably. I'll probably do an update post. And who's that for? Who's interested in that? Because it's everyone we know and work with, but it's also people wider than that.
Yeah.
And those artists then get multiple eyes on their work from all over the world, the way I
Yeah.
see it anyway.
Yeah. And that's made me go into I've seen quite a few posts recently about how Northumberland's used as a filming location.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we've seen quite a lot of dramas that have been filmed locally, and it's kind of
Yeah,
like, well,
loads
if you're
actually.
interested, yeah, if you're
Yeah.
interested in that, well, this company does this, why when you visit Northumberland, don't you go and look at what
Mm.
they're doing?
Yeah, you could almost have like a really creative project that was curating all the different locations and doing a bit of a kind of treasure map or something for people who are interested, couldn't you? There's loads of ways you could go with that. Yeah, I mean, it's a super interesting place to be doing our work, and we're very lucky to be doing our work here. It feels like a really good connector. We've had this conversation here and now in January, and yeah, I mean, I am curious as to where we go with this research, and I'll probably come back to you to sort of to do a direct ask to say, okay, like I've had a few conversations with organizations now, this is what's on the table in terms of investment. With that investment, we would hope to grow the mailing list to this, and then you would get X as part of that. But I think it's too early to say really, whether people would be up for it, and then how we physically make it happen, like move mailing lists over, and if we can, and who wants to be part of it, because we kind of have to have everyone agree really, like because of the way we are set
Yeah.
up, it's to serve everybody, so it has to feel fair.
Yeah, and the owners of the mailing list would have to ask the people they're mailing if they're happy for that to happen.
For
So
sure. Yeah, we'd have to be really careful how we manage all that. But yeah, it's something to think about, isn't it? And it's nice to
It
have
is.
a vision of what could be and what would solve some issues for us, and then kind of fill in the gap as to how and if we can make it happen.
Yeah. And we've got lots of questions and we need more answers, don't
More
we?
answers step
Who
by
out there?
step, I think.
Yeah. Who out there can help, hey?
Yeah, well, we'll put this out and we'll see if anybody's got any responses. I'd love to see if anybody wants to comment or email in. Obviously, you know, you've shared some brilliant resources and people can go and check out November Club's website and follow you guys across social media as well to stay up to date with what's happening and what the opportunities are, whether it's to see work or be involved in working in something. So it's been brilliant. Thank you, Andrea.
No, thank you very much, Claire. It's nice to chat.
Yeah, nice to chat. See you soon.
Yeah.